Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review. Battles Dross Glop. Record store day just happened this past weekend. Hope everybody had a good record store day. I got a few things, one of which is the new High on Fire record. Got that on vinyl, double LP, fantastic pressing, really great album art. I got that MC5 Africa Bambaataa 7-inch I talked about in one of my videos, and I totally completed my Battles remix series like a complete nerd. So now that I got all 4 of those remix 12 inches, I figure, hey, you know what'd be a good idea? Let's review the Dross Glop album. So Battles is an experimental rock band that underwent some pretty big changes on its sophomore LP that got released last year, Gloss Drop. They had just lost a pivotal member of the group, and they were kind of working through the change by bringing on a bunch of guest vocalists. Not only that, but their tracks were feeling much brighter, much more playful and upbeat to me. The band was just taking its trademark tight sound in a much more colorful and bright direction. On that second LP, Battles just had the intricacy of a math rock band, which is not surprising considering the group's ties to bands like Don Caballero and Lynx. But they also jammed like an improvisational rock group with these really hard, intense, relentless grooves. It's almost nothing but fire on every track, and the whole LP is just candy to me. I can't say no. Because of all those attributes, Gloss Drop landed in my top 10 of favorite albums last year. So of course, I am totally interested in hearing a series of remixes for every single song from this album, no matter how bad they are. Especially considering the lineup of people remixing these songs. A few I have done reviews for: Shabazz Palaces, Hudson Mohawk, The Field, Yakutama I, who was a guest vocalist on the last track from the album, as well as Code 9 and KANGDING Ray. But I usually do not enjoy remix albums, and I usually do not review them either. For one, there's usually not much in the way of a flow or consistency, since what you're really talking about here at the end of the day is kind of like a compilation of different artists all remixing songs in their own way. There's bound to be some stylistic clashing. And rarely are remix albums so good that they appeal outside of the fan base of people who are extremely passionate about the album that is being remixed, aka people like me. But for a remix album, Dross Glop is pretty consistent. I don't know how most of the people on this album ended up kind of cooking with the same ingredients, I guess. But a majority of the tracks on this album, to me, kind of ended up being very deep and micro house-esque tunes with very constant rhythms that subtly shift and progress over periods of 6, 7, 8, or even 9 minutes. Some tracks are so faint with their changes and their sounds, they almost border on being ambient. Not to say there isn't variety on here, though. Shabazz Palaces definitely comes in and does its thing, as well as Yakutama I, which I will kind of talk about a little bit later. I feel like I ended up disappointed with a good chunk of these tracks individually, especially given who was remixing the song. For one, I thought Code 9 would definitely put something together that was more akin to his dubstep roots. It wasn't a bad remix, I just thought maybe he played things a little too straight. And I thought Hudson Mohawk would put together a serious banger on this album, but he just whipped up a version of Roll's Basie that sounds pretty much like the original, but less is going on. Less. Original, but less. And I guess my even bigger disappointments with this thing are the moments where the tracks don't even resemble the originals in any way, shape, or form, really. To the point where I wonder what the remix and the original really have to do with one another, other than the fact that they're on this. Every artist on this thing is going to have a different remixing process and different thoughts, I understand that, but this album did get me thinking, what makes for a good remix? And for me personally, of course, it has to feel different than the original, noticeably different, but also the point of reference, the original, needs to be so clear and obvious in a way that you end up seeing the original, the remixed material, in a different light from a different perspective. And that's where I kind of feel like the Silent Servant remix and the Cluster remix fall a little short. Because even though I'm sure it's somewhere there, either influencing the keyboards being played or being sampled, that point of reference, that sonic point of reference, isn't really there. The track Dominican Fade has these lightly played keyboards placed on top of these quirky beats. There's not really a blatant sample on this track or anything like that. It seems as if the keyboards and the drum machine, which are pretty much the track itself, were all original. But still, not really seeing that point of reference. Ultimately, the song to me kind of sounds like a collaboration between Oneohtrix Point Never and Beach House's drum machine. But I also feel like the My Machines and Ice Cream remixes would feel pretty far away from the originals too if it weren't for the fact that the vocals from the original songs are so obviously sampled and executed. I will give it to Gang Gang Dance and Brian. I guess I was just kind of underwhelmed by a lot of these tracks. The Shabazz Palace's remix I'm not as in love with now as I am when I first heard it. The beat is very spacious, as it would be on Shabazz Palace's last album, Black Up. Palasier Lazzaro's vocals are just doubled up, soaked in reverb, very bouncy, trippy, kind of psychedelic. But the lyrics aren't that mind-bending or clever to me. Not as much as they have been with Shabazz Palace's tracks in the past. You know, it's not all complaints with this album, though. I did think the first several tracks were pretty solid. The Wall Street remix has a really great groove and some swelling strings on the refrain that really make the track feel refined. And the Field remix on here of Sweetie and Shag is great. He totally brought that looping state of mind sort of execution, making all of these cycling sections of sound feel so hypnotic. And I thought the track Futura was great too, with this nice constant hip-hop beat backing up the chords of the song kind of playing in the foreground. The thing is, I did not think this remix album was terrible. I liked most of the tracks, but was really only in love with a couple. The biggest problem is that this remix album brings a completely different energy than Gloss Drop. This album does not feel high energy, it does not feel fun, it does not feel playful, it does not really feel all that engaging. In some points, it does not feel high octane. It doesn't feel like the entire world is on fire and in an M&M candy shell. In contrast, Dross Glop is just much more chill, repetitive, kind of relaxed, with these very heady electronica tunes that may or may not even sound like the tracks that they are supposed to be remixing. Or if you're a huge fan of some of the remixers on this thing, kind of feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this, to be completely honest. I mean, yeah, I thought it was likable to me, but you know, really mostly as a fan. But what do you guys think of this thing? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Why? And what should I review next? Anthony Fantano, Dross Glop, forever.